Times have changed and times are strange. Here I come, but I ain't the same. Mama, I'm coming home. Time's gone by, seems to be. You could have been a better friend to me. Mama, I'm coming home.
Hey, I love you. Still ain't got no service and travel like 30, 45 minutes. Hopefully it keeps saying soon, so video chat, because I just want to hear your voice. I love you.
Lost and found and turned around by the fire in your eyes. You made me cry, you told me lies, but I can't stand to say goodbye. Mama, I'm coming home. I could be right, I could be wrong. It hurts so bad, oh it's been so long. Mama, I'm coming home. Selfish love, yeah, we're both alone. The ride before the fall. But I'm gonna take this heart of stone. I just gotta have it all. Oh, see your face 100 times. Every day we've been apart. And I don't worry about the sunshine, yeah. 'Cause mama, I'm coming home. I'm coming home. You took me in and you drove me out. Yeah, you had me hypnotized. Lost and found and turned around. Times have changed and times are strange. Here I come, but I ain't the same. Mama, I'm coming home.
My name is Lisa Spradlin. I'm 49 years old. I'm married to Carl Spradlin. We have a home in Parkersburg, West Virginia. We're currently staying in the Florida Keys to be closer to my father-in-law, who is having some problems with his health. Our 10-year-old grandson, Miles, lives with us. Miles' mother is my oldest daughter, Marley's oldest son, her only son, her oldest child. My dad had already had his transplant. It was 2007 or 8. I think it was 2008. We moved to Washington Avenue, a historic street, lovely neighborhood. It was a large house. The kids were excited. Like I said, my dad had had his transplant and we needed a bigger place. It was Carl and I, our four, my mom, my dad, my sister, and her daughter Alex. Lacey and I can't stay together very long in the same house. Wasn't long before she moved out. Not an uneventful move, but she moved and got her own place with her and Alex. And mom and dad stayed with me. If somebody got to arguing or, couldn't stay there, then like Dad went over and stayed with Lacey for a little while. Then he'd come back to the house. Mom and Dad had put a application in for an apartment to get their own place, but we moved in, and I guess Tristan, the first episode, I mean, he had always been really hard to handle, and he would run. He was a runner. From the time he could walk, every time he saw a police car, and I don't know why, because I wore a uniform. Family members were law enforcement, but Tristan, since he got old enough to identify a police officer, if he saw a police car or a police officer, he ran. He ran like he had robbed a bank. He would climb to the top of a tree, the top of a house, anywhere, but he was running. You have to watch him because he would jump out of the car and run. But that was the only, I mean, he was always laughing. He had the greatest laugh. The greatest laugh. You heard it in the video. Since he was little, that laugh. But the back to the first episode that he had, a major episode where he had to go to the hospital. We had just moved into Washington Avenue. The house was we still didn't have the furniture up. We really didn't have enough furniture to fit in this huge house. We were gonna have to buy some stuff, but it was our first night or two there. There was a 220 plug, and it was in the floor under the dining room table, where the dining room table was going to go. It had not been moved in yet. Tristan was playing in the floor, and it didn't have a cover on it, and the wires were stripped. He touched it and electrocuted him, and he panicked. He cried, and it scared him, and to keep him from touching it again, it was just the way my dad was. He was just joking. He's like, you might be okay now, but it could have long-term effects later on. You never know. You better quit touching those plugs. Tristan went into a full-fledged panic. He was crying. He said he was going to die. Please don't let me die. He laid on the couch with my dad. My dad was holding him, and he was pitiful. My dad felt so bad, and we ended up having to take him to the hospital, and it was like a foot of snow outside. But we got dressed, and we took him to the hospital. He was seen by the doctor and a child psychologist, which I was familiar with her. I had worked at Westbrook with the crisis team, and I knew she was a great psychologist. And she's like, it's a new house, So we went back home, ended up back at the hospital within a couple of hours. He just begged to stay at the hospital. He didn't want to go back to that house. So when we got home, my dad was like, it's because it's empty and it's this echo in here and it's sad. We're still so far away from home. It's still new, even though it's been a while. So he sent us to Walmart, my dad did, and he's like, get everything to go in that room. He's like, Tristan, when we get your room fixed up, you're going to like it so much. You're going to love it. So him and Blake was sharing a room, and Dad bought them bunk beds, rugs, pictures, put their TV up, their, I can't remember at the time if it was a PlayStation or Xbox, got it set up, put a mirror in there, and it had a door that walked out onto a balcony, which scared me a little with the boys because you never knew what they were going to do, but they done all right with it. The whole time we lived there, but once it got settled in, Tristan was okay, but I don't know, a couple months later, we ended up taking Tristan to Highland. Well, we took him to the crisis center, and they found a bed at Highland in Charleston, and he stayed there for a week. They put him on some medication. It may have been a little more than a week, but he came back, and that was the beginning of his going to hospitals and residential treatment programs. He would come home and he would stay for a long time, but as soon as something would go wrong, he'd be like, I want to go to the hospital. And there was no stopping it. He ended up going to a long-term residential treatment program at Fox Run in Ohio. And he stayed the whole time. We got to see him on the weekends. He'd get to come home. We went up there for therapy sessions, for visits. Everyone went to visit him. And he done well, but he still was a runner. He couldn't sit still. He couldn't sit in a room. He used to mow grass when we first moved to Washington Avenue. He loved to mow grass. He asked me when we first moved there, could he borrow our lawnmower and to mow a yard? And I was like, yeah. And I think he got like $20 was all. And it was a big yard, but he took that $20 and went to this thrift store, junk store, over on St. Mary's Pike and bought a used lawnmower. Really wasn't any good. It used oil, but it cut yards, and he started cutting yards, and he would cut everyone's yard for almost nothing. And I'm like, Tristan, you're not charging much of anything. And he's like, that's okay. I just like doing it. And it finally got to where no one wanted anyone to cut their yard except Tristan, and they were paying him what they were paying other lawn services, $50, $75. And he would leave early in the morning and cut grass all summer. And he would come home with a pocket full of money and give it away. He would buy everyone pizza. He'd be like, Blake, me and you can go to the mall. Marley, do you need gas money? Reagan, do you want to rent a movie? Do you want to go out to eat? Do you need something? Mom, do you need anything? Always giving it away. Everyone tried to tell him, my mom, my dad, me and Carl, save some of that money. He's like, I'm just going to keep $10 out of it. But he took that used lawnmower and he would mow grass, and he would put a little money with it and trade it for a nicer one, and trade it until he had a really nice lawnmower, hedge trimmers. And then school started and he didn't want to go. He just liked to be outside by himself, and he done well that way. But being from Mississippi, and I put my foot down, no, you've got to go to school. That's the only way. It's the only way. Then there was full of plans, protocol. We got to do this. We're going to put him in this BD class here, this BD class there, and he wouldn't stay. He would run. As soon as he could get to the door, as soon as his feet hit the floor, he was gone. And really one of the only ones that could get him to get in the car and go home and calm him down was my oldest daughter, Marley, who was kind of like his second mother. But he ran from Jefferson one time, and he was just running he couldn't hear you. He was just running wide open, would not stop. I was so scared he was going to run out into traffic. They had called me from the school. Marley and her boyfriend just happened to be going down the street and didn't know anything about it, but saw Tristan running and stopped and opened the door, and he got in the truck with them. But he knew that Marley was not going to take him where he didn't want to go, and that she would protect him. So he always had her and his brother and his other sister. Reagan's a loner, and Blake and him joke around. They joked around, and they would stay gone. They were thick as thieves. But Marley was more like another mother to him. And he loved Carl. He loved Carl so much. And Alex was the baby. He always laughed and joked with her, and they had a connection. He had an individual connection with everyone. But Fox Run kept him, like I said, for 18 months. And then I think that the program was over, and they was like, we've done all we can for him. We don't know what to do. He went to Presley Ridge. He was at Presley Ridge when Miles was born. He loved Fox Run, and he loved Presley Ridge too. He liked Presley Ridge better than Fox Run. He ran away from Presley Ridge a time or two. They got him back, but there really wasn't anywhere to run to. But they went on canoeing trips, and he learned so much. He had a beautiful handwriting. Tristan was very, very smart, very smart. He just couldn't cope with other people in close quarters. His mind was always wandering. He had OCD. He couldn't stand for things to be packed up in boxes or bags. He would take it all out and go through everything in there. Drawers, he would go through it all and leave a huge mess. He would just walk off and leave it. and I pack it back up. And 5 minutes later, he would come in, even though he already knew what was in the box. He could watch me pack it back up. He had to open it. He would go through, they call it down south pilfering. He pilfered through everything. The first couple months after we moved into Washington Avenue, Tristan wanted to go to the park. We didn't live far from the park. This is so funny. He was gone, and it was getting dark, and the street lights came on, and I was outside yelling for him. And I'm out yelling for Tristan. Well, here comes Jan, the captain of the block captain, the homeowners association, who is your typical block captain textbook. But anyway, she's like, "Hey, hon, what are you doing? You looking for Tristan? I just saw him go by." And then the Flints came out, the other people across the street, and everyone's standing there, you know, all pressed and perfect, just looking up and down the street for Tristan. And then all of a sudden, over the hill, here he comes, like Dennis the Menace. It's like a spotlight was shining on him. And he's dragging a tarp. And on the tarp, he has so much stuff. And he's like, "Mom, you won't believe what all the people on the street have thrown away. I've got something for everyone. Reagan, I got you a shirt. Marley, I got you this. Look, Blake, what I got for our room." And I was like, "You can't go through people's garbage and bring items they're throwing away to my house." He's like, "But it's really good stuff." And I never did stop him. He was a constant. It was constantly bringing stuff in, and me taking it out the back door. There was a little half bed in the basement, and my mom wanted a mattress to go on it. And she kept saying, "I'm going to have to get us a mattress." And one night it was raining, and I was asleep. I was upstairs asleep, and she said she heard Tristan come in, and he had this mattress. She's like, "Tristan, what are you doing?" He had drug it blocks home. And he's like, "I found this mattress. It's brand new." And it was brand new, but beside the point. Mom's like, "Oh my God, you got to get that mattress in here. Your mother's going to kill you, but we need this mattress. It's brand new." Of all things, a used mattress. Anyway, they get it on the bed, and Tristan's like, "Box springs is down there too, but I couldn't bring them." So him and my mother went back and got the box springs. Him and my mother and Blake in the pouring rain. It was a couple weeks later, I guess I come downstairs, and I'm like, "Where did this box springs and mattress come from?" And they was all looking at each other. I was like, "What?" We had a really nice home, and I was really very picky about it. I wish now that I would have just relaxed a little, but I just wanted to keep nice things. I worked so hard to get it for them, and I wanted them to keep them. But we had bought a recliner like 2 or 3 days old. And we left and went to the store, and Tristan and Blake were sitting in it together when I left. And when I walked in the door, I noticed it right away. There was these little black marks all over it, little tiny, it looked like somebody had taken a fine tip pen and just dotted it all over. I get to look at it, and it's burned. And Tristan had lit a cigarette, and it had fell off anyway. He was waving it around, and the ashes had spread and burned little holes in it all over. But they were always laughing. That house was always full of laughter. And they used to say, "Don't come over here." Mom, Dad, everyone be like, "You can't go to Lisa's house if you don't want to get your ass roasted, because those kids will roast you. You had to have a thick skin to be around them." They were close. In 2009, my dad, I got to watch the boys play football, Ramblers. Marley was cheering at Hamilton. Reagan was cheering at Ramblers. Dad went to everything. And Tristan was the smallest on the football team. We kept him and Blake together to play because we already had 2 football games to go to, and then if they'd have played on separate teams, it'd been 2 more. I don't think our schedule could have stood it, not with gymnastics and everything else. Excuse me. But Tristan didn't get a lot of playing time. But his coach, Elliot Rowe, who now, years later, and soon after we met him, become like my brother, he stood his ground, and he's like, Tristan's going to run the ball. His grandfather's been really sick, got a liver transplant. He's here watching him, and Tristan just really wanted to run the ball. Blake got a lot of playing time because Blake was big, and he was, you know, but Tristan was small and one of the youngest ones, and Elliot gave him the ball. He got a 2-point conversion. My dad was jumping up, yelling, "That's Tristan! That's Tristan!" His brother was jumping up and down. The whole family was there. It was a great day. But if he got benched or put in a different spot, he would kick the garbage can over and just walk off. You know, he would get so mad. Well, he went to George Jr. in Pittsburgh, or up in Pennsylvania, up above Pittsburgh, which is not, Pittsburgh's about 2 hours from us, but he loved George Jr. He loved it there. They were so good to him. He learned so much. I had, after all the kids moved out of, Dad died, Mom moved in with Lacey. Marley got her own place, and Reagan was a senior, and she was staying with her boyfriend a lot. Blake went to stay with Mom after she bought her house. The kids are gone. We lost the house. We closed both of our businesses, the clothing store and the roofing company, and I went to work. Well, first we bought a nightclub and lost a lot of money. Had already closed our other businesses, and it was really just too hard to pick ourselves back up. And we moved out of the house on Washington and got a really small house on New York Avenue, and both of us went to work for the state. Correctional officers. I started to work before we moved out of Washington Avenue, tried to get ahead of it, but it was just impossible. At Western Regional in Huntington, and then I transferred closer to home, St. Mary's, and then Carl started to work for the state soon after that, and Tristan was in George Jr., and he was doing well. I couldn't go see him very much. We were bankrupt. We were driving the same car. But Mom went to see him, and I saw him on weekends, and he got to come home for visits. But he got close to graduating from George Jr., and it was time for him to come back to Parkersburg. And I knew I didn't feel like he was going to do well because his friends were running wild, staying in the street. That's where Tristan wanted to be with them. He didn't want to go to school. I was scared to death. And I talked to his grandfather in Georgia on the phone a couple of times. And Tristan wanted to go stay with him, and I thought it would be best too. If he had graduated and come back to Parkersburg, he'd have never left. He would have, I'm not really sure what would have happened. I didn't feel like it would be good. It probably wouldn't have been this bad, but I thought that it was the best thing. So a week or two before he was supposed to graduate, George Jr., he came home for the weekend, and his grandfather come and picked him up. Mind you, he's disabled, and he still belongs to the state of West Virginia. Because they're the ones that put him in George Jr., so he's under their custody. So I felt like it was going to be when I was at work, and I was like, oh God, when they find out he's gone. But it was nothing. They didn't say anything. They didn't look for him. They didn't call and ask me where he was. Nothing. But after Tristan got to Georgia, he worked for a little while, and he done okay. But, I mean, things you have wrong with you, they don't go away just because you moved. In fact, some of them got worse. But he liked to go through, like Wendy was his grandfather's wife, his step-grandmother. She's great. But Tristen would go through her things, her drawers, her boxes, and that was aggravating her, and who could blame her? Tristen really wasn't doing it to be malicious. He can't help it. He does it all the time, or he did do it all the time. He couldn't stand for tags to be out of the shirt before you had tagless shirts. If he saw someone in Walmart who had a tag out of their shirt, he would flip out. He'd be like, make them put that tag in. Things like that. And he would he obsessive over it. And if he told you that he was not going to do something, he was not going to do it. You could have beat him to death and he was not going to do it. When Tristen would run, he would fight you to get away from you, to just get away from you. If you would let him go, he'd be fine, but he would run out and it, like I said earlier, I was scared he was going to get run over because he would just run. And so you couldn't let him go when he was younger. And you couldn't hold him down because he would claw you and pinch you. And we'd take a sheet or a blanket and wrap around his arms and just have to hold him there so he wouldn't take off running. But you would have to hold him for hours. As soon as you let him go, he was going to run again. There was, he had thrown a wrapper of some sort, gum wrapper or candy bar wrapper. I can't remember what kind of wrapper, in the floor. And I told him to pick it up. This is right after we moved to Washington Avenue, so 2008 or 9. And he refused. So I took his hand and held it open and put the wrapper in his hand, walked him to the trash can, turned his hand over, put the wrapper in the trash can, and told him he could go. When I go upstairs and come back down, the wrapper's out of the garbage, back in the floor right where it was at. There was no making Tristen do anything, ever. You could ask him to do it, and more than likely he'd be like, okay, I'll do it. But don't dictate to him or tell him he has to do something, and it got him in a lot of trouble. But I was working at, just made corporal or either I was interviewing for it, I can't remember, at St. Mary's. It was really important to me. It was a pay raise. We were just we had this small house that I hated. None of my stuff would fit in it. We had to get rid of almost everything we had. Our car was falling apart. I really needed this. And so I can't remember if it's right after I got it or right before, but Tristen called and he wanted to leave Georgia. He had that sick feeling, that anxiety, and he's like, there's nothing to do here. I want to leave. And once he said it, he was never going to let it go. It was right then and there, or never. And I was like, Tristen, I cannot leave work. I can't just leave my shift. We were short-staffed anyway. I cannot just leave. But I wish I would have. If I'd have went and got him, none of this would have happened. I told him he had to wait till I got off work. And when I got paid, I would come get him or send him a bus ticket or a plane ticket to come home. But he didn't wait. He walked all the way from Tennille to Sandersville, Georgia, and turned himself in to the dispatcher and was hoping that West Virginia would come and get him, because he was absconded from the juvenile probation. But his juvenile probation officer, Jessie Trippett, who treated him like shit the whole time, she never done anything to help him. Ever. She never did anything to help us. With him, I didn't know what to do. She refused to come and get him. He was a juvenile, disabled, in another state, and I should have went and got him. It was me. But they were responsible for him too. they said no, they wouldn't go get him. So he stole a truck, and it quit on him, and he set it on fire. And they didn't cut him any slack at all. Within weeks, he had taken a plea bargain without me there, without an attorney. I couldn't get an attorney. I called everyone. I found one or two from Atlanta, but they were going to have to travel so far and charge me. I didn't have that kind of money. No one in Sandersville or Tennille would take it. And because he had Asperger's, he wasn't diagnosed with Asperger's, but one of the therapists she really believed that Tristan had Asperger's. She was trying to get him diagnosed before he left George Jr. He was diagnosed with other things like ADHD, OCD, but she believed it stemmed from Asperger's, a spectrum disorder of some sort. His little sister, Presley, has some sort of spectrum disorder. His uncle has a spectrum disorder on his dad's side. So Tristan was just so high functioning, and I didn't know anything about Asperger's or anything like that back then. But I knew Tristan didn't think like us. And I say, just the people in his lives, he just thought different. His mind wandered, and then he made up his mind, and that was it. It was just over. And Tristan had scoliosis. His back hurt him all the time. I found out years later that while he was in Georgia in prison, that a correctional officer slammed him down at Lori Yeager in West Virginia and broke his back. They never once contacted me, told me. And then when he was talking to me on the phone after he was in prison, he was talking about breaking his arm. He broke his arm while he was in prison. Things a mother's supposed to be there for. No, I wasn't a good mother. I should have been better. I should have went and got him. They give him 20 years. He broke a window because he has some kind of disorder. He was locked up in a cage in an adult facility, and he broke a window. He got called on another inmate's cell phone, and so it was just stacking up. But for the truck and the arson, they gave him 20 years, 10 to serve, 80% of that 10, which would have been 8 years, and another 10 on paper. So I finally found an attorney, and he said that he would see what he could do. He contacted either the prosecutor, Tristan's attorney, someone in Sandersville, and he called me back and he said, if I file this to be reconsidered, because he was disabled, he shouldn't have been questioned without an adult. He should have had someone there with him, and he's not supposed to be able to take a plea bargain because he was disabled as a child. He said, but if I file it, they're going to give him they'll make sure he does the whole 20 next time. If they win, he said, so for some reason they took it really, really personal. I offered to pay for the truck, the fire fee, the cleanup. They just wanted him to go to prison. And the first place he went when he left there was diagnostic in Atlanta. Within a week, he was stabbed in his eye and lost his left eye. I think it was his left eye. He couldn't see out of it anymore. He said he walked out of his cell, and everybody at home, everyone he had talked to is like, just keep your head down, just keep your head down. He said, so I did. I had my head down, and I walked out of my cell, and I bumped into this guy. He's a Muslim, and he's higher ranked with one of the gangs there. And the next day he walked out of his cell, and he stabbed him in the eye. The next 7 years, he would be stabbed so many times I can't count them. And so when he got ready to leave diagnostic, he called me and he's like, whenever they classify me and get me somewhere, they'll call out in the morning. They'll be like, Charles McKee, get your whites. He said, if they call and tell me to get my whites, it means I'm going to prison. But if I get my regular, if they don't tell me to get my whites, it means I'm just going to a work camp. But the way my charges are and I'm a juvenile, I should just go to a work camp. A lower level prison, but instead he went to Dodge, which is a chain gang camp. They tell him put his whites on it. He said he was so shocked he couldn't believe it. He said when he got on the bus, there was these young prisoners on there, and they was like, I'm ranking up as soon as I get there. I'm going to stab somebody and rank up. And he's like, I was scared to death. I didn't know what to do. He's like, it's just like you see on TV. And I said, just don't get any neck tattoos or face tattoos. That's what I was concerned about. I was like, you'll never be able to get a job or anything. He would just laugh. He's like, I don't even know if I'm going to make it out of here. I didn't know if he was going to either. But he called me and he's like, I'm going to have to affiliate with somebody or I'm going to die. They're going to kill me. I told him to do whatever he had to do just to come home. I said, well, only you know the dynamics in there and you do what you have to do to survive. Just come home. So he affiliated with the Crips. And they turned him into a savage. He was still my baby and he loved me. But he's like, a sticker is like an ice pick that you sharpen down. And he's like, everybody else's is about 4 or 5 inches long, but mine's only 3 because I don't want to kill anybody. And I know right where if I have to stab somebody, not to kill them, I just don't want to kill anybody. And that was our life. Every day. And he was ranking up. He's like, I got to put the work in or they ain't going to put the work in for me. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. And then he went to Hayes State Prison. He had been in Valdosta, Dodge, he'd been on chain gang. He was only 17 when he left. He left in a pair of khaki shorts and he was going to Catholic school by then, and he had on a light blue Catholic Crusader jersey, football jersey, and a pair of Sperry's with no socks. He looked like the epitome of upper class Catholic kid. He had a cross that he wore everywhere. He loved Ash Wednesday. He loved it. He loved Lent. But that's not the way I got him back. He was mutilated. They stabbed him so many times. But several years in, he got put on a TIER program, which is solitary confinement. He couldn't write, he couldn't call. And when he did, he was so angry. You would just have to listen to him and then hang up on him because he was just so angry. I called lawyers. I called everyone I could. They have a parole board in Georgia, but you don't see them, the inmates don't see them or their family. You just do a portfolio. They go off of paper. And if it's not done exactly right, it's a legal document. They kick it out immediately. The cheapest one I could get was $6,500. Some of them wanted $15,000 to do one. But he got turned down for parole. And he called me one day and he's like, this orderly's letting me use a cell phone. You gotta get me out of here. I've been in here for 12 months. I've only been outside twice. And I'm starving to death, Mama. You're starving me to death. He said my skin's turned gray and it's flaking off and I'm losing my fingernails and my toenails. My hair's falling out. I'm seeing things and I'm going crazy. So I call the human civil rights. Nobody listens to you when your son's alive. And I've had a lot of phone calls and a lot of people listen to me since he died, but to be honest with you, not the right people even hear you when they're dead. But I called the human and civil rights people in Georgia, and this lady just happened to answer the phone. It was after hours, and she's like, we have people that are dying. You know, this is not the kind of case that we take, but I'll make a phone call for you. And she did. And they moved him. He was still at Hayes, but he was out of the tier program or at a higher, lower level tier. He had more movement, a shower, more food. And I'd go months sometimes and not hear anything from him. And if you call Georgia, you don't ever talk to a person. It goes to like a switchboard. And they want to know where your son is or whoever you're calling about, their DOC number. And then they're like, if you're worried about where they are, they'll tell you where they are. But getting a hold of a prison, a warden, impossible. Impossible. The whole time he was there, I never spoke to anybody inside the prison. Until the day he was murdered. Or they called and told me that he was dead. He was tortured. He had tattoos on his face, his neck. He was loyal to the Crips. Georgia State Prison done that to him. They turned him into that. He was classified wrong. He was a nonviolent offender. He was a juvenile that was disabled. And he had to fight for his life every day. COs beat his ass so many times. I just can't even tell you how many times. They broke his arm. They broke his jaw. His back hurt so bad he never was treated for anything. If he got a headache, he just had to wash his face and lay down. I have migraines and they hurt so bad they're debilitating, and I just can't even imagine being in that hot cell that's so hot. He said it's so hot I can't breathe. And in January of this year, he was moved before January 2021. He was moved to Hancock State Prison. In January, I broke my leg in 3 places. And I was on the couch. I could not put any pressure on it at all. And he got a cell phone. No, he wasn't supposed to have it. It was illegal to have, but everyone in that pod had one. There were so many cell phones, and you could hear the correctional officers or see them if you were on FaceTime with them, in the cell with them talking. his cellmate had got moved or something, and he had a phone, and he left it with Tristan. I kept telling him that phone's going to get you killed. It's going to get you more time. And he's like, no, it's not. It's not, because every CO here is dirty, every one of them. They're bringing them in. They're selling them for anywhere from $700 to $1,500, $700, $1,500. He's like, they're not going to charge me with a cell phone. Even if they take it from me, they're going to sell it to another inmate, beat my ass, and put me on lockdown, so I'll shut the fuck up. And, but if they charge me with it, then there's going to be an investigation from Atlanta that's going to want to know where it came from. So nobody's going to get charged. He's like, all those female COs in here, they're only working here because their boyfriends are incarcerated, you know, to bring them stuff in. And he's like, but it's all good here. It's good here. I like it here. And he did. Every night, all I could do was lay on the couch and talk to him all night. All night long.
Mama, I'm coming home. I could be right, I could be wrong. It hurts so bad, oh, it's been so long. Mama, I'm coming home. Selfish love, yeah, we're both alone. The ride before the fall. But I'm gonna take this heart of stone. I just gotta have